Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Faith Unaltered, another week where we discuss all the big issues and topics and whatever else there is. My name's David Russell, and I'm joined with my co-hosts, Tyler Fowler, Josh Davidson, and from Real Seekers, we've got Dale Glover to talk about the topics tonight. What's up, guys?
Dale the Hitman Glover taking out all David. Why am I not?
You're not
Yeah,
loud enough.
you're not loud enough.
So now he's just totally muted. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just scaring the heck out of Mr. David Russell. He's not used to our
All right, I'm back.
Cobra chicken, so I was showing him a video of Canada. Otherwise, known
It's a goose. It's a goose, Dale. It's not a Cobra chicken. It's a goose.
You have not encountered the Canadian when they're on this side of the border. Those things are vicious. They will.
What? Do they ontologically change once they cross the border? Like, is that how that works?
Yes.
Yeah, when they're here, we call them lake snakes.
There are
Like
videos
snakes.
of tigers being afraid of these things. So
We just hit them with our cars.
Yeah,
you can
pretty
zoom
much.
it half down. So yeah,
Oh,
they
man.
go crazy.
Now we're gonna have FEMA up our. Well, never mind. But great, David. Thanks for that. No, I'm doing good, bro. I'm glad Dale's here with us. Dale, the Hitman Glover, as I was trying to say, taking out David Kimball Cooks everywhere. So I'm really proud of this guy. So
He was
I thought you did
cooking
an
last
awesome
week.
job. He was cooking. Yep. So
Awesome. Yeah, I did a lot of prep for that, right? So you guys kind of saw. I came on your show for the open mic, and I did kind of a prep with the two archaeological proofs. But then I threw in the three knockout punches with David Campbell there on my show with the First Corinthian Creed and
yeah.
N.T. Wright's sufficiency argument, where the empty tomb and the appearances together are sufficient for resurrection belief. And then the other one was the traditional embarrassing women testimony, right? I mean, who wouldn't be
Right.
embarrassed by having women testify to something, right? Whoops. That's
Yeah, you're sexist.
Well, he just admitted to being racist earlier, so it is what it is, I guess.
yeah.
Nothing surprises me from
Oh,
Dale
man.
anymore.
Nothing. Well, I mean, when you think geese or snakes, it tells you how far you've actually gone.
Yep, drinking milk out of bags.
We
Might as well
love
just drink it
that.
out the udder,
Josh
bro.
Davidson, how are you, brother?
Oh, what's up, man? I'm good. Having a good week. Just got home from work and I'm tired, but I'm sitting upright and I'm breathing properly. I'm blessed, man.
That's a
Right on,
win.
right on. It is. It is. Well, guys, we've got a special night for you. As Paraspera says, oh boy, deconstruction. How are they going to represent my side of life?
Hopefully
today?
accurately.
I know.
Like that's what I'm hoping for. Maybe not.
Yeah,
We'll see.
there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a big movement going out there, and we wanted to discuss it and at least address it in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form, because I believe some of these questions that people are having is accurate. They should be having these questions, but
Yeah.
they shouldn't be just running away. They're not getting the type of answers they need, so I think evangelicalism, I think the church by and large, no matter where you're from, has actually failed in this area. Some of these questions have easy answers. Some of these questions take a lot more thought, So we live in an information age, right? But some of the information that is out there is just purely wrong. And a lot of times we're like, I want to say one clip wonders, right? So we'll listen to a clip on the internet and take that for granted. Or I was watching a TikTok video about the Tudors, like King Henry VIII and this and that and his family, right? And they're going through some weird things that, were supposedly true about that family, that when you look it up, it's not true. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. There is a lot. They say that a lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth gets a chance to put its boots on. So in that, I wanted to address some of the arguments. We got videos. We're going to play them for you. And I want to address these things and address the different arguments. We're going to stop and go. And if you guys want to stop, just tell me to stop it and I'll stop it and you guys can comment. So that's what I want to get into today.
Before we get started, I will say, David, that I think the evangelical community, as well as the Roman Catholic community, as well as the Orthodox community, are doing a better job at addressing some of these things with the advent of the internet and channels like ours to respond back to these things. Yes, I think we have failed in the past, and that's why we're seeing so many like deconstruction. But at the same time, you give good answers to people, they still don't accept them, right? And so in one, it's really a two-way street, in my opinion, as well. But I will say I think Christians are doing a much better job than they have done in the past answering some of these questions.
I think that advent really started in around a little after 2007.
Yeah.
Right. We started like being aware of the problems that we had. Still today, I go to different churches that are resistant to apologetics. But I was part. Yeah, I was part of a church that actually promoted it, because that's kind of the churches I research into. I'm not gonna go to a church that's resistant to it, right? Because I think it's so needed. We need to have an answer. Now, you're right. I think since the advent of 2007 with William Lane Craig and all these guys like getting front row seats instead of back row seats has been a lot better.
And don't forget, David, our best apologist on the Christian side is now Richard Dawkins. He's announced he's a cultural Christian. So
no way.
I swear to he's come out saying he's backtracking now that he thinks getting rid of religion totally is not the answer. We need cultural Christianity. So
he's been listening to a lot more Peterson.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
But with that said, guys, I mean, yeah, we have failed, but it's already infected a generation, right?
Yeah.
And like Tyler said, there's a lot of people now producing content, and I don't think we're going to reach those guys because they got skin in the game, right? They got a pride, right? And they're going to look for those excuses. All I'm doing is saying, look, we can counter this stuff, but I just hope it gets through to the people that already have the skin of the game and they can humbly admit, like Richard Dawkins, that we need some sort of social Christianity of some sort. So that's what I'm doing here tonight. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know if you want me to stop the videos and stuff like that. Do you guys want to get on it? Or anybody got anything else to say?
Just real quick.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, just real quick. For our audience, if you have a question for us, please feel free to ask that question. As you all know, super chats get priority. And so if you want to send us a super chat, hit the little $sign at the bottom of your video, the video that you're watching right now. $sign down the bottom of that. Click it. You can send us a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. And if you want, and I guess the way that it works is if you have, the more you donate, the more characters you can type in. And so, like we always do, if you feel the calling or the leading to donate to us or to tip us, we will answer your question immediately. If not, we will still answer your question. It's not like you got to buy a question from us, guys. But if there starts coming in a lot of questions, we might not get to all of them. And so if you want your question definitely answered, send us a super chat and we'd be more than happy to take care of that for you.
One thing I just wanted to say before we get started, because it is relevant to the topic of Christians and deconstruction, which I don't like that term. It's too postmodernist to me. But okay, so basically today, believe it or not, I did a short fan request video, less than 1 hour, which for me, the audience will know that's incredible because I'm a blabbermouth. I go hours and hours and I'm repetitive and all that stuff. So. But it basically, Dr. Gary Habermas and Joe Marino reached out to me and asked me to respond to this skeptical article, 14 Reasons Why Christians Don't Believe in the Easter Resurrection. And supposedly these were objections of Christians as to why they don't believe. So I did a short video answering all of those 14 things in a brief format. So, that's kind of related to this topic of deconstruction. I'll just say the objections being put forward were not... It was obvious that that person had not done research and, like appealing to Jesus mythicism and dying and rising gods and that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to announce that because it's related to today's show.
This might be controversial, but can you really call yourself a Christian if you don't believe in the resurrection?
You cannot.
You cannot.
I don't think that's controversial.
Okay. I'm just...
Well,
Hey, you see the kind of things that happen on these interwebs. I'm just saying.
I had a Christian in my audience. Let me ask you this though. So resurrection is essential. What about if somebody who doesn't believe in a bodily resurrection, but they believe in a spiritual resurrection?
Nah, I think it.
First John calls that Antichrist.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, good to know. So
That's
okay.
true.
And one more thing that I could add, just for clarity, and I think that this is relevant. Troy said deconstruction as opposed to demolition. One has the purpose of rebuilding with the good. The other destroys all with no intention to save what is good. I think that that's a relevant distinction between a couple of different styles of deconstruction that people are employing online right now. And some of them, like Dale said, are obvious, where they have questions, and some of them are even good questions, but they don't seem to have any intent on looking very far before getting to an answer. You know, it doesn't seem like what they're doing is looking for an answer. What they're doing is looking for the controversy of having a question that they feel is unanswerable, which is a very different motive.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going to see some of this, guys, in the videos. You're going to see the arrogant ones, and you're going to see the real questions, right? So I've got a few videos, not all, but I've got a few of them. We might get to them all, we might not. But we're gonna hit them all. The first one is gonna be one of those arrogant ones that are about demolition versus deconstruction. So without further ado, I'm
Super
going
chat.
to
Of course,
Super chat. Hold on. Pause this.
Yep.
We got super chat from Troy. Thank you, Troy, for the $10 super chat. Please define deconstruction as opposed to demolition and the deconstruction of postmodern thought.
Who wants to take that first, guys? I mean, by all means. I mean, we're all gonna have an answer to this one, but
I feel like I know what he's asking, so I guess I'll take a stab at it. I would say that the difference is similar to what I just laid out as far as motive or intent, right? Or a willingness to engage in action, because it's the same thing. Like, let's say you're an HR department at your job, and someone comes to you consistently with the intent to draw out the issues and bugs in the system of your operations within the job, right? All of the jobs that are going on need to be improved in some way, and that's good. But if all someone is doing is coming forward to complain about its inefficiency in some direction, and is never actively or operatively looking to solve the problem, they're only looking to make light or make obvious that there is a problem, then that person is not looking to reconstruct, or they're not doing a deconstruction so as to make the thing better. What they're doing is, let's say, nitpicking is a closer word to what they're actually doing, right? And in terms of postmodern thought, a lot of this comes out because of the fact that this is kind of this kind of is birthed out of a movement that in essence kind of says ultimately that there's a near infinite number of interpretations to any given text or proposition, without going to the fact that there is not an infinite number of viable interpretations for a text or given observation or whatever, right? And so I think that a lot of people kind of get mixed up in this, and they have, as Screw Tape Letter says, a pile of dancing incompatible philosophies flying around in their brains, right? And then, like, they don't really know how to sort through some of the objections that in most cases would be really good objections, but they don't actually land anywhere because they're not looking for a solution. They're looking to identify objections. And a lot of this comes from a preemptive rejection of Christianity, or some form of moral standard that Christianity purports that they want to actively avoid. And so there's this continual search for reasons. You know what I mean? And it's not reasons in the way that Christians would continually look for support or reasons for the faith. Though some of them do the same game, and they'll ignore things that they find inconvenient. But I think that in the deconstruction world, it often is, especially the way that it's received by people who have done a lot of reading and research. They'll listen to some of these questions or these objections and be like, bro, you haven't picked up a book, And so that's one of those things that I think kind of lends itself to making that distinction in a really useful way.
Anybody else before we move on. I do want to get the video started as quick as we
Yeah.
can. But
I
yeah,
don't have anything to add.
yeah,
Christians.
this is the first one.
Of course, we're going to speak about something we dedicated years of our lives to.
All right, so that's the first objection. They do want to speak about it, but as I said, what's the reason behind it at this point? Is it because you dedicated your whole life to it, or is it because you have an axe to grind?
So what was I couldn't hear anything you said.
Okay, I'll replay it.
Okay.
We're ex-Christians. Of course, we're going to speak about something we dedicated years of our lives to.
Okay.
So that's where I question the first thing. When people start making videos, you start getting like skin in the game. You start really getting it. Is it because you have an axe to grind, or is it because you literally are just trying to do whatever it is? I think from what I've been through, there's always a volitional aspect to this. There is always this axe to grind. I'm an ex-Christian now. I've deconstructed. Now I want to get back at it. I want to show people why I deconstructed and tell them, you can deconstruct too, and all this stuff. There's a lot of that on the internet that I'm seeing. Anyone else?
Well, I mean, fair enough. Like, it's not like I don't think there's a reason why people who leave Christianity should have to be silenced about it. I don't think that that's what we're saying. I think what we're saying is voice your opinions, voice your objections, but do it in a way that's thoughtful. And if you're not going to do it in a way that's thoughtful, don't expect people to take you seriously. And if you expect people to take you seriously, you kind of have to, something's got to give here, and so I think that, like, the main issue is that if somebody wants to go and spend their time and their resource and their attention on something that they don't believe anymore, they value the thing enough to speak out against it. Right. So this is something that they valued, something that they prioritize over other things that they'll spend their time and attention on. Why? Why do you feel the need to evangelize your non-evangelistic worldview? And I think a lot of times it's because this affords them some level of, let's say, moral high ground in some conversations, or perhaps the edginess of being something that people don't expect, or being able to say, well, I was a Christian, so I know what I'm talking about, and things like that. Not to pull the no Scotsman fallacy, and some of these people were never Christians. I don't go that far. I don't honestly believe most of them when they say they've read anything and then they come up with questions that make it obvious that they haven't. And that's why I'm saying that some of those people need to reassess what it is that they think they're doing and why it's so valuable to them. But I don't think anybody's telling them that they should just stop talking.
Yeah. And I think there's this fine line where, you have a question that's legitimate versus having a question that is just so easily answered. It really makes me think, like, did you really investigate this?
Right.
Did you really seek this out? And I hear what you're saying there, Josh. Let's move on.
We're ex-Christians. We love the believer. We're just not too fond of the belief. We're ex-Christians. Now that our eyes have been opened, we couldn't go back even if we wanted to. We're ex-Christians. We're not mocking your religion. We're just pointing out the flaws within it.
Okay, so what do you guys think of this so far?
I think that this is more of a quirk than it is an objection. But I understand the draw, especially in the context that they're putting it now. They're kind of framing it like they're treating Christianity the same way that an ex-cult member would treat their cult, something like that. That's what it tastes like when I'm hearing this.
Right.
One thing I noticed that he said is interesting, that, like, he said something, again, it goes by so quick, but he said something to the effect of, look, we're here, we can't go back, or something like that. And I just want to say, says who? Look, if you are open-minded, I was an ex-Christian. I was a member of this quote-unquote deconstruction movement, or whatever label you want to throw on me, for a period of 8 years. I totally lost my faith. I was a non-religious agnostic for 6 months, and then a general theist for 8 years. But I'm a Christian. I'm here today. I came back and believe in Christ and that sort of thing. So yeah, you can go back if you're following the evidence to the best of your ability. Maybe, unless you're trying to say that you're God and you're omniscient, you've gotten the final analysis. It's impossible for Christianity to be true. Then what you just said makes no sense. You're kind of revealing your bias. You're not open-minded to considering the truth of Christianity at all. maybe never were. I don't know.
This guy sounds like somebody I'd be interested in having a discussion with about like his testimony, why in the world he left. Because, you know, I mean, at this point, you know, I like what he said about we're not trying to mock your system. Now, he's not speaking for everybody on TikTok, because we've ran into multiple people that do mock the system, right? So I'm curious who this group of we are, and let's have a conversation, you know?
Right.
So
We're ex-Christians. If God wouldn't answer our prayers for ourselves, what makes you think he's going to answer your prayers on our behalf? We're ex-Christians. Yes, we did genuinely believe in God. We just don't anymore. We're ex-Christians. No, we don't
just
believe
pause
that
it.
everything...
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? We believe in God, because I've said it on here multiple times. Belief in something, right, is on two fundamental levels, right? You can believe in something like Santa Claus, for example. I hope none of us here do, but there's that kind of acknowledgement that they exist, right? Or what we talk about whenever we say believe in Jesus is trusting him with the capabilities that God has given you, and to know him on a personal level, not just I believe in the existence of God, right? That's not what we're talking about. And so when I engage with different people like this, that's always my first go-to is, okay, you say you believed in God. Well, what do you mean by that? Because did God do something to where you're not trusting in him? Like, did he let you down? He's talking about answer or unanswered prayers. That's a whole nother can of worms that we can get into if we want to. But that's kind of the focus that I have whenever I talk to deconstructionists like this is, what do you mean whenever you say, I believed in God?
That's a good question, Tyler. I also think it's very important about his notion of prayer. I think that that's kind of revealing, like as far as like
Right.
you don't think your prayers ever been answered, you know? So what makes us think that our prayers are going to work? Well, our prayers, we know we have a deep understanding of what it is to pray, and what that is to pray God's will. And
Right.
as we'll see later on, what does that look like, praying God's will, right? What does it mean to pray God's will? Because it's not our desires that we should be bringing to the forefront. I had a guy talk greatly about like, okay, so when God answers your prayers about like, getting your keys, having your keys found, or there's a miracle, and then he ignores the guy that got into some accident, and it's like, dude, you can't look at it like that. That's not how it works, prayer is a deep communion you have with God. It's not just, can we expect a miracle and that's how we're supposed to work. God's not some divine butler who we can just order around and do whatever he wants, so yeah, I totally hear what you're saying, Tyler. What do you mean by belief? And I also think that, a deep understanding of prayer and what it means to like Troy's saying here, prayer is not wish fulfillment. I think that's also the case, so I'll move on. Anybody else want to comment though before we do?
Just real quick. God's not a genie, right? And I've seen God act personally. Like I was watching this video today where this girl gets into a car crash. A guardrail goes right through the entire length of the car on the driver's side, and she escapes unharmed. Like she should have died in that. So God answers our prayers even whenever we're not praying. So anyway, that just to that point.
Okay, so just one quick. So I agree with the main point that you guys are saying. I think it's well said in terms of belief in God, and figuring out if the ex-Christian here does he have a problem of propositional belief that God exists, and or does he have a problem of belief in terms of the trusting nature? Does he have emotional things against God? And in terms of the prayers, I also take your guys' main point that God's not a genie. We're not to have this arrogant, selfish, kind of prayers for, just what we want. We don't care about others and that. But that said, it is not wrong. We are supposed to come to God. Prayer is in part wish fulfillment. We are to come to God with what we desire and unleash our heart. Like, hey, God, like this is what I really want. But obviously your will, I have my priorities straight. Your your will be done. If this isn't meant for me for the betterment of everyone, then I don't need this pool table or something like that. But God does want us to be sincere and to come with our passions and desires and share that with him as well. So that it's not wrong to like ask God for stuff. But just as long as you have the proper perspective on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with you, Dale. Like Jesus tells us to come to him with our wants, right? I think what Troy and Josh, you know Troy better than all of us, I think. Going back on that genie, kind of analogy thing, that God doesn't just grant us wishes, right? Like, yes, he does grant our wants and our desires sometimes if they are in line with his will, but God's not going to grant you something just because you ask for it. Rather, why are you asking for it? Is that in accordance with his will? And if not, then you're not going to get it. I mean, it's simple. And why? Why don't we get everything that we want? Well, because sometimes God knows better than we do about things, right? So I would say all the time, just being a little facetious. But real quick, to answer this, just real quick, and then we can move on to that next comment from Aspera at Astra. So what happens if I don't pray? I think you're missing out. I simply put, I think you're missing out. God doesn't encourage us to pray. God commands us to pray. And because that, I truly believe it changes things, right? And so everybody knows here that I hold this energy. And when we participate with God and in God, right, we are fulfilling what God has ultimately decreed in a non-deterministic way for all of us all, right?
Right.
And if you don't, that's just an element of not participating in God. And so to answer the question just simply, what happens if I don't pray? You're missing out, period, on the subject.
Yeah. And not only that, but, prayer is a deep communion. Not only are you participating in the overall plan, it does change things, and it's not going to change the mind of God, but it's going to change the circumstances, right? Why? Because that's part of the overall plan. It's all part of that, like you said, non-deterministic plan. Like God knows what he's doing, and he added that into the very fabric of reality,
right,
to affect change. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I would say.
It's like saying, what if I get married, but I don't talk to my wife? Then you're missing out, and you're probably going to be hurting later.
Right. The only thing that I would add to anything you guys have said is 2 words: faulty expectations.
Yeah. Touche.
Dang, that was good. I wish I said that.
And what about people who die tragically in spite of prayer? How's that not evidence against the contrary?
What do you mean, like praying for somebody with cancer and they end up dying instead?
Or
I think that's probably a reasonable example. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Or you could take syrups. If a plane falls from the sky, 300 people die, 1 survives. You think God saved that person?
Absolutely, I think God intervened in that scenario. Right?
It's possible. I would say it's possible.
Or
yeah.
you were just in the right spot at the right time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But I don't know. I don't want to be too hard here, so I'm going to let, if anybody wants to, I'll answer this question, but I want to let somebody else go first with per Aspera's question here. So if anybody wants,
is
to
it evidence to the contrary? Dale, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Dale.
Okay, so and what about people who die tragically in spite of prayer? So how is that not evidence? Not evidence to the contrary. So I think it's again, it's about having the proper expectations, right? So in the first place, regardless of prayer, everyone is going to die physically in the end, anyways, right? So you can't pray your way out of biological death. So we know that for a fact, right? So no matter what, that's going to happen. But also, as we were saying before, like we know that prayer serves a relational function in terms of us sharing our desires with God and sharing our desires and hopes with each other if we pray together as a communal group and that sort of thing. So that no matter what, everything molinistically is contributing to this end goal of saving as many free will creatures as possible. And I think that God, that's the main goal, the priority that we should have in mind in terms of when we're saying we're praying in accordance with God's will. So ultimately, okay, is this person dying from cancer at this particular time versus any other time. My grandfather just died last week. He was 98 years old, and he's been in the hospital for a couple months now, I would say. We were hoping for the best. I was praying that he would keep going, and he didn't. And that's because I have trust in God that, okay, he knew providentially what was the right time for him to die in order to accomplish his main goals and, save as many souls as possible. So that's why sometimes, even when we're supposed to pray for what we want and what we desire, we recognize that God's will and his providence sometimes know that we're praying for the wrong thing. And, it's
the better outcome overall for anybody is his will, because he knows what's best. It's not about hit and misses, per aspera. It's not about hit and misses. It's about him sometimes saying no. It's not the best time. It's not, it's not accordance to his will. He holds that right to say no. He is God. He knows what the best course of action is going to be.
And one last thing, answered prayer is not like a proof test, right? We're not supposed to treat prayer as though it's a falsification test in the same way, if you can prove, we do have falsification tests as Christians. If we can prove the resurrection didn't happen, that falsifies Christianity. That's a falsification test. But prayer is not in that category. We're not supposed to be testing God through his, did I get the prayer answered in the way that I wanted it versus a different way that God knows is better for me and stuff. So I think the attitude, don't treat prayer as a falsification test. Because I see atheists and skeptics constantly doing that. They have this, God's a genie. If he doesn't act like a genie, that proves your God is BS and stuff like that. They point to J.P. Moreland. Where's my pool table? I wanted a pool table.
Right.
Come on, guys.
And what about the hits? I mean, it seems like the unbeliever wants to emphasize the misses, right? It's like, well, what about the hits? Like, what do you specifically do with those? If God, say you pray for something, God does come through on that, God does answer that prayer. It's like, what exactly do you do with that? Is that just coincidence for y'all? Is that proof of God? Like, it goes both ways, y'all. And I would just add to what I was going to say earlier, all death is tragic. It's good that you recognize, Praspera, that death should not be here, right? That's what we believe as well, that death is a corruption of life, right? That God gave us eternal life in the beginning, probationary anyway. Adam and Eve screw that up, and now we experience something that was never meant and intended to be experienced, right? This is why the crucifixion of God himself is so horrible, and yet at the same time so beautiful, because now we can have eternal life. We don't have to experience death, nor do we need to be afraid of it anymore, as all humans were, as the Bible says. And so all death is tragic, period, and subject, and that is a great recognition from you. Like, awesome, we agree. So Jesus fixed that on the cross and the resurrection.
And just to kind of like round it off a little bit, I don't want to like rant on or anything like that, but one of the things that he said was, how do you know if it's working, right? Like he's asking, is this evidence for prayer working? Prayer isn't a mechanism. Like, prayer isn't a light switch or, the ignition on your car, or like something that has the same function every single time it's employed. Prayer is an earnest asking. And asking is not a mechanism unless the thing you're asking is a vending machine, right? Ultimately, this is more so like, my children come to me, and I tell you they do this daily, multiple times daily. They'll come to me and ask for a snack or a candy or for Minecraft or any other such thing. I'm their father. They come to me and say, Father, may I have my thing that I want? Does my no mean that I don't exist, or that their asking is useless or meaningless? I would say that's silly. Obviously, they ask me because I'm in their life. They ask me because I'm the one in control of what they can and cannot have. They ask me because I have the jurisdiction and the authority, the sovereignty over my home to say whether or not they can have the fulfillment of their desires. And also, they come to me because I'm good to them. And even often when they don't deserve it, but especially when they do, I do give them good things, especially the things that they like and that they want. But the times that they don't get them, often what their assumption is, just like it sounds like what he's assuming, is this didn't work. Maybe I should try something else. Sneaking doesn't work, right? So that doesn't work. They're learning these things as they go. That's the experimentation. The thing that works most is to ask earnestly,
Right.
not to try to take for oneself, right? So the fact that no isn't, like Troy said, no is an answer, right? I gave an answer to their request. That doesn't mean that their request is meaningless or that it doesn't work or that it's simply a display of my power before them to be able to say no. It's ultimately the fact that their asking is a relational thing. It's not a proof of anything other than the fact that I'm their father and they believe that I'm going to answer them. One way or the other, they believe I'm going to answer them. If they didn't believe I existed, they wouldn't ask me for anything. And if honestly I didn't exist and they asked me, I wouldn't deliver anything to them.
Right.
And so obviously, if somebody's praying earnestly, it's because they believe God exists. And if they believe God exists and they're praying earnestly and it doesn't actually come to fulfillment, then the assumption wouldn't be, oh, prayer doesn't work. It would be, oh, that was a no. So ultimately, this is just, I think this is a category area of thinking God is a mechanism of some kind.
Right.
Right.
Ex-Christians. No, we don't believe that everything came from nothing. That's a Christian belief. We're ex-Christians. It's not that we had a bad experience, it's that we outgrew the lies. We're ex-Christians. We're not obsessed with your religion. We're just excited about our freedom from it.
Pause. What lies?
There we go. There you go. There's more. As you see, as this video goes on, you're seeing more of the telltale signs of somebody that didn't know it and has an axe to grind. And I think that's where you're looking at that demolition aspect versus anything else, right? So you assume there's lies, right? You assume that Christians have a certain belief that something comes from nothing. No, that's not what we claim. Maybe you got a piece of the argument, but that's not the entirety of the argument right there. We say that God created everything. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? There's a prime mover, and we don't believe in the logical fallacy of infinite regress. So, that's just that's science, and that's philosophy, So, then the whole aspect of we're celebrating our freedom from it. That's where it starts even more revealing also that, you have an axe to grind when it comes to this, but I'll let you guys go. I don't want to take the whole thing.
Can you just, out of curiosity, I'm not trying to like stall or anything like that, but can you replay that little section?
Yeah.
Okay. That's good right there.
Ex-Christians. No, we don't believe that everything came from nothing. That's a Christian belief. We're ex-Christians. It's not that we had a bad experience, it's that we outgrew the lies. We're ex-Christians. We're not obsessed with your religion. We're just excited about our freedom from it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. So again, I would push on, okay, what are the lies? Because, like to generalize something to that effect, it seems like axe grinding or clout getting, right? Like, can you be a little bit more specific and like give an example of what apparently your light's about? Now, here's the thing. Pastors, unfortunately, and this goes for Protestant pastors, Orthodox priests, Roman Catholic priests, sometimes, they lie. They screw up. They tell us some stuff that's not true, right? But this shouldn't reflect on the religion. And I know that's a dirty word in some circles, but Christianity is a religion, y'all. That should not reflect on the teachings of Christ and the apostles, right? Jesus specifically said, do not lie. Like this is a core belief of Judaism that stems all the way from Moses to Jesus. Jesus reemphasizes this. St. Paul talks about this in his letters. This is a fundamental belief of Christianity, period, in the subject, right? You do not bear false witness against your neighbor, right? And so for someone to do that, right, shouldn't then reflect on the system, right? But rather the character of that person that lied to you. And so I've lied. I mean, like all of us have, right? At that point.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that Christianity is false by some stretch of the imagination. That's
Yeah.
just weird. But give an example of the lie.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And to say, unless you want to claim that you're morally perfect, which I don't think anybody would,
I hope not.
most people are going to laugh at you. Then I would say, yeah, absolutely. But also to the fact, it's to call it myth, to call it a lie, it's just a historical dishonesty.
Yeah.
I mean, the Gospels are historical narratives. They are Greco-Roman biographies. These guys were writing not a myth. They were writing so people could say, hey, look, this was what really happened. It's a historical narrative, period. So you may not buy the claim. You may not buy the evidence for that claim. You may not agree with it. But to say it's a lie, to say it's a myth is wrong. It is wrong.
Right.
It is. They wrote that specifically as a historical telling of what they saw.
Yeah,
what
real
they were
quick
taught.
too. Just real quick, Faith Unaltered, how do you know you're not being deceived? Because Jesus rose from the grave. We've proved that over and over on this channel. Dale Glover has proved that over and over again on his channel. You show me evidence that Jesus didn't rise from the dead, I'll quit being a Christian today.
Right. We have no
That's
choice.
how I know I'm not being deceived, because that tomb is empty. So anyway, sorry.
In context, he was talking to me. We were having a discussion about
Okay.
the verification of the testimony of the Holy Spirit in relation to answered prayers and stuff, right? So basically, yeah. So
Fair
I
enough.
guess on that, I'll just say, look, the Holy Spirit provides testimonial evidence to our spirits, which is the faculty of our souls that allows us to relate to and know God. This is my belief. It's consistent with J.P. Moreland's teaching on the soul and that sort of thing. Now, the way that works is that the Holy Spirit, when it testifies, it produces what's called properly basic belief. In epistemology, this is a well recognized source of warrant. And warrant contains within it a factive component. It's a reliablest criterion for knowledge. Okay, so it means it contains that the belief has to be true. It can't be false, right? So if I've got a degree of warrant on a balance of probabilities, then basically it's a belief, true belief, produced by faculties operating properly in a suitable cognitive environment for those faculties, without subject to malfunction, in such a way that they are meant to produce true beliefs in response to that. And the way we are internally aware of that is once the conditions for warrant are set up, we internally, that produces within this the qualia of knowledge. So that's how I know that I've got warrant. And because warrant inherently contains a factive component, it cannot be wrong. For example, if you have 100% degree of warrant, like 1 + 1 = 2, it is impossible. That can't be a false belief that I'm deluded. So that's what I'm talking about there, right? Obviously, if you have degrees of knowledge, I still base it on the evidence. But yeah, if I'm 53% convinced that Christianity is true, I know that Christianity is probably true, but it's possible I could be wrong or deluded or something like that, because there's a 47% probability. So that's how that works. But the thing I wanted to mention about this video before I got distracted by that is the thing that stood up to me in this part here is the point that this guy was saying that we grew up, we left behind these childish beliefs. And that's something that always sticks out to me, because in my dealings with atheists and skeptics online, such as on Skeptics and Seekers, there was always this ego, prideful component, like, hey, like I was deluded, but now I know. Now I'm so much more enlightened, not like you primitive little Christians with your religion and all this stuff. And I've sensed a fear of being wrong. Like they're afraid to follow the evidence or even look at the evidence, because for fear of like, oh, I don't want to be laughed at again. I don't want to find out that I'm wrong again. And that there's that fear that they'll be mocked or shamed because, hey, they got it wrong. I think if you're open to truth, look, follow the evidence as best you can. Like David Hume said, apportion your belief according to the evidence, basic evidentialism. Sure, in certain cases, you may find out you're wrong. Who cares? There's no shame in that. You're doing your best to follow the evidence where it leads, but don't shut down and close yourself off from considering the truth of Christianity out of fear of, I don't want to be duped again. I don't want to look stupid again. No, there's no shame in being wrong and learning new things and following the evidence where it is. And if you open yourself up, that's what I did. I went through the same thing. I was an ex-Christian for like 9-10 years, but I remained open to the truth, and God eventually showed it to me. So always be open. Don't close yourself off to the truth out of fear of, I don't want to look foolish. I don't want to be childish and duped again. Who cares about that? Follow the evidence. Open your heart to truth.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dale. I do hear what you're saying there, and I agree. Like what Tyler was saying about what we've already done on this channel, I think, is that we have enough evidence for us to say, look, this is true. We think it's true. We think it's yes, that's why we have debates on this channel.
Right.
We want to hear all sides. We want to hear the conversation, right? That's why we address these hard issues. We have our evidence. To say there's no evidence, that they're lies, that they're myth, is, to me, is just, it shows a bit of dishonesty.
Yeah.
And that's where we're coming from. Anybody else?
I don't want to
All right.
derail.
We're ex-Christians. We know that you're not actually praying for us. After all, God's not a genie. We're ex-Christians.
Hey!
We have just as much right to speak
Agreed.
about our experiences as Christians do.
That totally wasn't mocking, by the way.
Ex-Christians.
Totally
Of course
not.
We praise Klomidrov. We're ex-Christians.
Whoa,
We're empty threats of hell
pause.
don't
Klomidrov? What is that? That sounds like a Russian, like, alcoholic beverage. Yeah, give me some Klomidrov. Like, what is that? Hold on, I want to Google this. Klomidrov? Does anybody know?
I don't. That befuddled me when I first saw this video. But yeah, again, like, what about the genie comment?
This is the place for all things. Klomidrov, our true savior. It looks like a. Hold on. Anyway, sorry guys. I'm not trying to derail, but I just that threw me. I've never heard that word before. If anybody knows in the chat what Klomidrov is, please let me know, because it looks like a manatee with tusk. Or not a manatee, but like a bison, like manatee looking thing with tusk. Like, I don't know what that is. Sounds like the flying spaghetti monster to me, but anyway.
But the one thing that I saw, it's like, who he knows that we're not praying for him because God's not a genie. I mean, no, that's not true. Christianity in itself is a participatory and evidential faith. We do participate in the plan of God, and that is us praying, and trying to affect change through that. But anybody else before we move on that?
No, the Klomidrov thing threw me off. Sorry.
Sorry, that was I was trying to respond, and I that was an accident. I wasn't trying to put that up there. My fault.
Oh no, you're good, bro. You're good.
I think the
Empty
the thing
threat.
that confused us with the extra vocabulary word was an interesting addition there. But I think the way that this guy is approaching the video started with a couple of things that seemed calm and reasonable,
right,
as a way to introduce the less calm and the less reasonable later,
yeah,
to where this is getting a little more quirky, a little more fiery. And for entertainment purposes, right on, bro, that's funny. But at the same time, you started by saying, we're not mocking.
Yeah.
And then you concluded by saying, this is mock-worthy. Like, okay, well, I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe some forms of Christianity are just stupid. And fine, fair enough. Some Christians are probably stupid. Fine, fair enough. Some of them probably deserve to be mocked for being stupid hypocrites. But, fine, fair enough. But
sorry, no,
they do.
Stop making fun of David Russell. He's not that stupid.
Well, if you open a video by saying we're not mocking, we're just overcoming the lies, and then continue to kind of poke the bear by making more and more mocking comments, the only thing that I can come away with this is that I would never listen to this guy give a charge of hypocrisy against the church.
Right.
I don't care what you say anymore, to be honest, on that front. Like,
Right.
especially as somebody
Oh,
who
okay. So we're done with this video. I'm just
I-
joking.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people. I'm one of those
We're done.
people that go out of their way to call out hypocrisy where I see it in myself and in people that I believe are actual Christians.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people where I'm like, I don't think that's going to fly. I don't think it's a good idea. It's not a good witness. Tyler knows about this. Like,
Yeah, he's done it to me a lot.
and Tyler's done it to me, and then it's fantastic. If we're not doing that for one another, we're going to step in it metaphysically.
Yeah.
Let's say. And so I think that it's the case that if we're going to call out hypocrisy, we should be able to do so as those who are in the church, right? And those who are outside the church should and can call out hypocrisy within the church, but don't expect to be heard if you do it during a hypocritical kind
1
of
minute video that we
delivery.
spent an hour on.
Yeah, a delivery
Yeah.
like that.
Hold on real quick. Perez, for
right.
his mocking probably stems from pain and valid anger at real corruption, but he said it didn't, though.
Right.
Earlier
He
in the video,
he
he
said it didn't
specifically
hurt.
said he wasn't hurt.
Yeah, he wasn't hurt. He
No.
was just outgrowing the lies. And
Lies.
so
Right.
Yeah.
at that
And
point, what he's trying to say is that his mockery is maturity, and it isn't.
And and you know, you might be right. There might be that underlying issue, perhaps, and these are the things that we pick up on all the time when it comes to this demolition versus deconstruction type thing. You know, are these or in this movement, there is something there that goes beyond what is said, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, and I think you were right to detect it.
We're ex-Christians. Your empty threats of hell don't scare us. Not anymore. We're ex-Christians.
Pause.
We don't have demons.
Yeah, I wanted to. That's what I was going to respond to.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, very quickly. Like, I will just say, what the empty threat, the threats of hell don't scare you, kind of thing. So I understand if they're empty, if you know that they're empty and that they're false, then of course, yeah, I'm not scared by, scary things in the Harry Potter books or whatever it is, some fiction thing. Or
What? I ain't got to be scared of Dementors anymore?
Exactly. Well, there are.
All right.
But look, unless you've got 100% knowledge that these things are false, then you dang well better be scared. Look, I don't believe in Islam. Islamic version of hell, the torture chamber model, where my flesh is literally burned and flayed off for all of eternity, it grows back and then only to be burned off again in utter pain. That scares the heck out of me. So
Yeah.
I think that's just the rational response. If that belief is true, and it's possible that it's true, then yeah, that should prompt you to be open to considering the evidence. And same with Christianity. I don't believe Christianity teaches a torture chamber model of hell, but hell's no picnic. It is eternal torment,
Right.
more of a spiritual and emotional. It's relational separation from God for eternity. That's not getting pitchforks shoved up your rumps every day, but it's even worse in some ways. I mean, imagine being in a place devoid of love, real pure love and hope and trust and all these things, and just having your sin unleashed to compound and grow for all eternity unrestrained.
Yeah.
In this world, it's bad enough. Look at, my gosh, with the Democrats or the demon rats and Joe Biden, they've turned this world into a heck hole, I think. But that's nothing compared to what literal hell is. God is still restraining the effects of sin in this world. So
Here,
take it seriously, I think, right?
yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing, all of this, all of Christianity centers on one person, namely 3 persons, but one person, human person, and that's Jesus Christ, right? And here's the thing, okay? We can argue if Jesus really existed. We can argue if Jesus was crucified. We can argue if Jesus rose from the dead, right? But if that last one is true, like, I don't care if he really existed. I don't care if he was crucified. But if he rose from the dead, then that proves in and of itself that hell is real, right? Because it proves that there's life after death. And with Jesus doing that, right? Jesus's claims to be God, Jesus's evidential proof that he rose from the dead, right? All of these things then go back to his teachings, right? Jesus, we're not making hell up, y'all. We're simply repeating and teaching what we have been taught, that stems all the way back to Jesus. Now, if you want to try to make a case that Jesus didn't teach anything about hell, I think you're going to come up null with that. But the point is that if Jesus rose from the dead, then that in and of itself proves hell is real. If he didn't, then this guy's right. Hell's empty. Like, the threats of hell are empty. Live however you want to. Why be moral, man? Like, I'm going to live for me. I don't care about anybody else, right? I'm going to do what pleases me. A hedonist. I'm going to be a hedonist. But that's the issue. And that's why I go back to saying we've proved over and over again that Jesus rose from the grave on this channel, on multiple other Christian channels, on Real Seekers. Like, it's just, it's true. That's like asking me if my wife, Tyler, do you think your wife exists? I don't think she probably exists. I know she exists the same way that I know Jesus rose from the grave. So,
yeah, no, I hear you there. I just want to add this. Hold on. I just want to add this real quick because I think it's very important. I do think that there's been a lot of bad teachings about hell, and I think there's been trauma involved in some circles. Absolutely. I do agree with Per Aspera on this. I mean, it has been traumatizing for some people. Absolutely. But there is a but. This comes down to researching. C.S. Lewis put out a great story about the reality of hell in a fictional aspect. Okay.
The Great Divorce.
The Great Divorce. Absolutely. And it describes, the alternate view that Christians have held for millennia about hell. It's a great way that describes it. But more research can get you past the brimstone preachers. If you really gave your life to Christianity, you really love Jesus, okay, then you dive deep into your faith and you end up knowing why you believe what you believe, and you can look at the belief on hell in a different light as what Christians have also taught about it. Okay. So yeah, go ahead, Dale.
Well, this is really important. I wish I had said this in what I said, because this is not just about Christianity. Is not just about avoidance of hell. Like, sure, that's an initial thing. You're wanting to avoid that, so you look into it perhaps. But look, the positive motivation. I did a show with an atheist, David Johnson, from Skeptics and Seekers, on, is Christian salvation or heaven worth it? And we have to, the main thing is the positive thing. The positives. I follow Christianity because I want to have eternal life in God's relationship presence, so that eternal loving relationship with God and others in heaven, with no sin, no pain, no crying, no tears, with the creator of the universe, who's omniscient and stuff. Imagine everything we could learn and grow and have an amazing time, pleasures we can't even imagine in this life. So there's that positive motivation. That's the main reason we as Christians follow it. Avoidance of hell is part of it, but that's not our driving force. Look, I do good because I love goodness. I love God and other people, and I want to do what's right for them, and never hurt them and stuff like that. So that's what salvation is. So that's the one thing I wanted to make clear, is that, look, for us as Christians, trying to find the truth is not just about avoidance of, oh gosh, I don't want pitchforks or hellfire, so I better believe. No, there's positive reasons why it's great. It's an amazing experience to believe and to be in God's presence and stuff. And I want that. I want these good things. That's what I was created for. So, yeah.
I want to address this really quick. If we could prove it.
Can we do the first one first?
Oh, yeah, we could do that too.
So this one right
I want
here.
to kind of, okay, yeah. I do want to chat on this for just 1 second, both of these. But yeah, I think proof could be a too strong of term, but it depends on what you mean by proof. Okay. I don't live my life with 100% knowledge, but I do have to say that people find any reason not to believe in something. Okay. We've got people that don't believe in a round earth, and they're making justifications for a flat earth. Okay.
That's hard to justify.
That's really hard to justify, but I just think people will find an excuse for any other reasons. There's so many different reasons why people don't believe and why they don't want to believe, that they end up doing that. A lot of people don't take honest approaches to these type of topics. Okay, and that's what we're here to address. And I think, yeah, maybe proof. It depends on what you mean by it. Is it 100% proof? For me, I can go with 98% and say yes, that's true.
Wow.
For me.
I disagree. Jesus, for me, Jesus 100% rose from the grave. I know Jesus rose from the grave. Like, I know my wife is sitting in there watching her phone right now. Like, that's proof for me, right? 100%. Jesus rose from the grave. Like, that's what I meant by it, right? And to this, if we could prove it, it wouldn't be so hard to justify the belief. It's not hard to justify it, right? Again, we've laid out the evidence in previous shows. We can do another show on this. This isn't what this show's about right now, justifying why Jesus rose from the grave or anything like that. We're simply addressing deconstruction and demolition videos, right? But it's not hard to justify the belief. This is why I believe it, right? And so, and I think it'd be the same for all of us, right? That it's not hard to justify it. This is why we believe it. This is why we trust Christ, right? I'm not going to put my trust in something that doesn't exist. And so, with that being said, like that's what it is for me anyway.
And I just want to follow up. Look, there, because this drives me crazy. I deal with scientists and stuff on my show, like with the Shred of Trade, and I always hear proof is only in mathematics. It's only if you have 100% absolute knowledge. BS. I'm sorry. There are different standards of proof. As a philosopher and logician, there are different standards of proof. Think in a court of law. There's proof beyond reasonable doubt. That would include 98% with David Russell. There's proof on a balance of probabilities. When I use the word proof, I'm usually talking about that on a balance of probabilities is my standard. If it's more probable than not, all the way up to 51% to 100%, that's proven in my books. So that just be aware, there in logic, it is proper to use the word proof in different senses because there are different standards of proof. It's not just, oh, well, there's only proof in mathematics. Horse manure. Stop listening to scientists. Listen to magicians. We're smarter. Sorry. So.
Can we philosophize that the Earth is flat?
You could.
You can.
I guess you could.
Yeah, I just think it's crazy to demand that 100%. It's not that I disagree with it. I just think it's crazy to demand that because I don't think. I mean, I don't have 100% proof that I'm going to get in my car and be able to drive to work. My car might break down. But I don't live my life like that. I get in the car and I drive to work. You know what I mean? So it's like that in a sense. I hear what you're saying, Tyler, too. Like, you have no good reason at all to believe that your wife isn't sitting in that room. I agree with that.
It's absolutely. A simulation.
Yeah. I mean, but we could go that route, right? I could say, hey, look, you're in a simulation, but that's like me trying to make an argument for a flat Earth.
Right. Right. One last thing, and then so I know David has done a really good job of putting these videos together, and we're still on the first one after an hour, so I definitely want to try to transition back to that. And so let me just say this will be the last time that if you guys want to engage with the comment section, unless it's like really, really good, then we will focus on the videos right now. If you definitely want, I think we've done a really good job interacting with the chat up to this point, right? And so if you have we can sit here and answer questions all day long, right? But if you really have a serious question, you want your question asked, send us $1 super chat and we'll answer it. But I don't think we're going to do like what we've done, unless you guys want to engage with the chat as much as we have. I think we've done a really good job, but this will be my last little spiel. Just don't overclaim the data that sets kids up for disillusionment who have grown up in the faith. And so I agree with this, right? To a point. I don't think we are overclaiming the data. I think the data is there that shows and proves without a shadow of a doubt that Jesus rose from the grave, right? Period. In the subject. The thing that kids are being disillusioned about is what is being purported in your secular colleges, your secular academia. That's what, and leading these kids astray from Christ. That's what's being purported as disillusionment. That and it sickens me, to be perfectly honest. Like, there's such an axe to grind against Christianity that people will go to all lengths to try to have an argument against it, right? and the hypocrisy within it is absolutely ridiculous within the movement itself. And we're seeing a good little piece of evidence of that here in this video. And so, yeah, I think if anything is the illusion, it's the fact that, or it's the affirmation or whatever that Jesus didn't rise from the grave. That's the illusion.
Yeah, I also think there's two sides of this coin, right? I think that the church has taught this as a given, right? They've taught this as a given, and they don't answer the hard questions that come with it. And Tyler is 100% correct with the disillusionment about what kids get out of college or out of high school or get into these secular schools where they're challenging it because that, like he said, there's an axe to grind, right? So they've pitted science against faith, where people like us are like,
Right.
no, I think science and faith go together, right? And that's how we should look at it. We shouldn't look at it, and it may be because there's been a lot of abuse throughout the church, throughout the years, and throughout the ages. With wars and whatever. There's been a disillusionment there. But I don't think, and I do think there's a problem in a fundamentalist home, that goes straight out, that doesn't give their kids the answers to questions or even bring up the hard questions. I bring up those hard questions,
or
to
allow
my
for
kids,
questions.
and I allow for questions.
Right.
And I get them. My daughter gives them to me, my son gives them to me, and then I make it a point to give them a challenge, and have them try to explain it to me and what they think. Because I don't want them to take it for granted. I don't want to isolate them from the environments that we live in. I want to inoculate them the best I can and say, look, science doesn't have to be pitted against faith. They can
Right.
work together.
And do.
I truly believe that with all my heart. So I get that, and I totally agree with what you said, Tyler. And I do think there's also this other flip of the coin where we have failed in the church to ask hard questions, to engage hard questions, because I came from a church system that was like blind faith, just believe. Pastor
Right.
says, pastor says, pastor says. And I think that's a toxic church. I think that's a toxic environment for anybody, whether they say, well, the priest says, or this guy says, I think that's where you go too far. It's not. You need to know. You need to have the hard questions, and you need to study. We have to go beyond Sunday school. We have to look into it. And we've got to go further than we got to go further, than just the surface.
Yeah. And Per Asper, I would love to hear your story anytime, like in a private conversation, or if you want to come on here and publicly
come on for an open mic.
Like, we'd love to. But either way, we're not trying to say, hey, come on here and debate us. Like, no, I would just love to hear your story. Offer, some feedback if you would like that, or just sit back and listen to you. Either way.
To hop back to the video real quick, the thing that we stopped at was a mention that they're no longer afraid of the threats of hell. Let me just concede that if somebody is trying to stage Christianity as a response to a threat of hell, that person is telling the wrong gospel. Okay? Because the gospel, according to the scriptures in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, as it's laid out, doesn't even mention the word hell. The gospel itself isn't. This is very similar to how I was talking about my children earlier. My daughter's favorite reward for doing what she ought to do is being held by me. My favorite reward for seeing my daughter succeed is holding her. And that relationship can be its own reward, right? My children know that when they do bad things, they're liable to be held accountable for that. And sometimes that means active punishment. Sometimes it means chastisement. Sometimes it means both, depending on the severity. But they don't obey me because they're afraid of punishment. They obey me because I love them, and they know my love for them, and they experience my love for them when I give it to them. And there's different ways that I can. Sometimes when I wake up in the morning, right, and my children are still asleep, I'll go into the kitchen and I'll sometimes like write a little note on the fridge or draw a picture, or I'll set up something that they're going to find that day. And it's going to, oh, you know what? Dad was thinking about me before I even thought about it. You know, I recognize now that he was thinking about me before I was thinking about it. You know what I mean? And that intentionality as a parent can be a great lesson to the children that shows them that obedience and relationship can in fact be their own reward. And we don't even have to rely on threats in order to get compliance out of people who are in love. And so I think that when people have to rely upon hell as a threat to change someone's mind when they're in the role of a skeptic, I think they're shooting in the dark, to be honest with you. And I want to give a much needed rebuke to those who would hear this in the future, who would in fact employ that method, that when you meet a skeptic, your first inclination, or maybe your only inclination, or even if it's, you know, your second inclination, stop throwing around hell as a threat. It is not your threat. It is not even your hell. It's not your jurisdiction. What you should be doing is giving what you were given. Paul says, I deliver unto you of first importance the things that were delivered unto me. And hell wasn't part of that message. Okay, so I think that Christians are wrong for using hell as a club or a threat. I'll just concede that. However, this person's nonchalant, dismissive attitude about it is similar to how, you know, children who are, let's say, in middle school, who learn about things like the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus, go to their younger, you know, contemporaries that, let's say, at the family gathering or at school or whatever, and then start to tout around their newfound information as though it makes them superior, like Dale was talking about. And I think that that makes him smaller, not bigger. And so when, you know, let's say the people that I admire most, especially the people who I know are wise, are always the first to say, what do I know? Okay. And so that, I think, makes a situation in which your admirable wisdom is actually admirable, is when you don't have to project it with a puffed out chest of some kind. You know what I mean? Just you know, for our Christian audience.
All right. Let's just go through this last bit. This is almost done. So
yeah, go
We
ahead.
don't worship Satan, and we don't love living a life of sin. We don't believe in any of those. We're ex-Christians. We've lived our whole lives without God, so an eternity without him doesn't sound bad at all.
No, you haven't. In him we live, we move, we breathe,
And
we have our
breathe,
being.
right?
So you just because you don't think you have, right, doesn't mean you haven't. So anyway, interesting. But yeah, all overall thoughts about that video. Agreed, and we've said it before. But you know, it goes from genuine to this arrogance that ultimately derived from hypocrisy. And so, yeah, I wasn't impressed. I was impressed at the beginning, but then he turned into something that he said that he had a problem with. And so, yeah, throw it out. Throw it in the garbage. We need a little video of somebody throwing a piece of paper in the garbage can. That's what that is. All right, next.
All right, guys. Well, let's move on. We've got another one. I think we could probably watch most of this without commenting, but we're going to definitely be commenting on the totality of it.
Real quick, somebody asked in the chat a while back, and I don't know if this was answered or not, but just real quick, what denomination are we all? So I'll just let everybody speak for themselves. I'm Eastern Orthodox.
I'm technically non-denominational. I'll call it Baptist light, but I'm liturgical leaning.
I am more Reformed Baptist, but without the Calvinism.
I'm Baptist at heart, but I'm currently attending a Presbyterian denomination church. So.
All different faith backgrounds, and we can come united on fundamentals that we all believe in.
I actually really love this perspective. So this commenter is saying, I feel like too many Christians try too hard to prove God is real, yet the scripture says, be still and know that I am God. And I think if you believe in God and you have faith, so you believe in God because of your faith, that's awesome. That's, you know, and that's yours, right? That's your faith. But having faith that something exists is really different than having evidence, having proof that something exists. And so, I think when we're talking about proof, we are in the realm of science and empiricism. But then when you talk about faith, it's a completely different thing. And so I think you don't need to work so hard to prove your God is real if you accept the existence of your God solely on faith.
See, this is a perfect example of what I was trying to say a while ago, right? We don't believe that let me put it like this. We don't only believe that God exists. So the Bible, which I think would be a really good resource to go to lay out what the Christian tradition is. But this is how the writer of Hebrews, traditionally St. Paul, describes faith and gives the definition of faith. He says this in Hebrews 11:1. Now, faith is the assurance. Notice that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Right, and so you still have assurance. You still have the conviction, right, of these things, and yet they aren't tangible, right? And so in a way, now maybe you guys will disagree with this, and I can stand corrected on this. That's a problem. But it doesn't seem like, evidence or things, empirical evidence, let me put it like that, is what is being described here in Hebrews 11:1, right? We don't physically touch Jesus. We don't have the opportunity, like the writer of First John did, who I believe is John the Apostle. He said this, we saw him, we touched him, we heard him, all of these different things, right? Like, we don't have that, right? So we are relying on eyewitness testimony, just like they do in court, and that's our evidence, right? And so to put Jesus under the microscope, so to say, no, we don't have that, but we still have conviction, we still have assurance, and our faith is not blind. Period. And
Right. I think you're right, and I think for this particular faith is not proof. I mean, this is the I got you moment for atheists, right?
Mhm.
Because this is where they pit the science and proof and evidence and basically say, yeah, you believe blindly. You believe off of something without evidence. And this is what they've been trying to do since day one, right? And this is why they're like, yeah, I think that's okay. Well, because guess what? You really can't prove it. Because proof is relegated to empiricism, which empiricism is also has to exist on presuppositions that prove that it's true, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
there's a lot to this, but it is the I gotcha moment. If someone admits that, hey, look, I believe off of faith, because they have a misunderstanding of what faith is. Tyler just read to you the assurance. It also says, the conviction could also be translated as evidence, right? It also, if you look at the word pistos, it is trusting in something, and they saw it, they touched it. Christianity is an evidential faith, and it goes out of its way in its writings to say that, as Thomas touched the risen Christ's wounds, is a point of saying, look, this really happened. This is the evidence. The resurrection is evidence. Jesus actually coming back from the dead to validate his claims. It's an evidential faith. So anybody that does rely on blind faith because pastor says, or they say the Bible says, I think you're not diving into it as deep as you should. I really do. And you should know why you believe what you believe.
Yeah,
David, you was on point. Sorry, Dale. Let me just make a quick comment, and then I'll hand it over to you. So you're absolutely right. In that, and good job. So elenkos means, quote, this is how Lunita defines it: the evidence normally based on argument or discussion as to the truth or reality of something. Proof, verification, evidence for. So nice. And that's the word that's used in Hebrews 11:1 there. So awesome.
Right.
You taught me something tonight about Greek.
Hoo-ha.
yeah, I take the same view as David was mentioning, and I think Tyler as well. Like, faith is trust, right? It's trust in in God kind of thing, that he'll keep his promises and that his character is set in terms of his moral character, and he will fulfill his promises, despite the fact that we're not there to see his second coming yet. And that's the issue that was going on that the writer there is talking about. So this is just it's a misunderstanding, right? Faith is not a type of, I would disagree. It's not a type of evidence. It's not a source of warrant that warrants, belief in God, belief that God exists, or belief that Jesus is God, or something like that. No, that's talking more about that aspect of trusting in God. Like you've got an evidence-based trust in the same way scientists have an evidence-based trust that the sun will rise tomorrow. We've got evidence from the past and stuff like that, and we know, yeah, it's all else being equal, it's going to rise tomorrow, just as it does every other day and stuff like that. So, we all exercise an evidence-based trust in our lives in various matters, in science, in history, and dealing with your spouse and stuff like that. So that's what Christianity is here. It is an evidence-based trust in God and his character and what he's done for us, through his death and resurrection on the cross, and that he will keep his promises in the future. That's what this text is talking about in context. So yeah, this notion of like, oh, just a blind faith, and meaning you just mindlessly trust without any evidence to support that trust. That's where the cults come in, as per Asper saying, right? You can try many belief systems. Faith is a dangerous. No, it's not. No. Blind faith. Now that's dangerous in circumstances like cults, but that's not what Christianity does. It's saying, no, you've got evidence sufficient to warrant your faith and trust in God. So that's the way I look at that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important to hammer home the fact that what this person in the video that we just watched was doing was making a conflation between faith and wishful thinking or preference, right? Because that's the way that she was talking about this idea is you have faith. That's nice for you over there in you land. But over here in me land, we do it this way. It's like, that's okay. Look, nobody here is willing to bend the rules enough to try to play a game and say, okay, faith means wishful thinking. Faith means believing in the absence of evidence, or even in some cases, people thinking faith means believing in the face of contrary evidence. Faith in the biblical sense doesn't mean that at all. And the fact that David and Dale have both said faith means trust. Let me just add to that. Trust is not an abstraction. Trust is not just this thing floating out there in the ether. Trust is something that is deeply connected to action, to intent, right? And so if I trust my wife, I'm going to behave to and with her very differently than if I did not trust my wife. And if there's anything that anybody who's ever been burned can tell you, trust is very expensive. And God doesn't play games, and we shouldn't either. God has proven himself trustworthy through the testimony of others throughout the entirety of Scripture, and through the testimony of others who have encounters with God, myself being one of them, and the three other gentlemen on the show have encountered God in various different ways. And we can testify on our own to the trustworthiness of God and that he's proven himself to be worthy of trust over and over. But our testimony subjectively is not enough, let's say, to convince someone else. Okay. And so there is going to be, in some sense, an act of genuine courage and bravery to cross the bounds into, I'm going to try and trust this thing, this idea, this person, what have you. That could be Christianity. That can be any number of things. But trust, because it's expensive, is requiring bravery. And people often think that people who are trusting have to be either stupid or naive. If you trust without evidence, you are stupid or naive. If you trust purposively to find out about evidence or investigate something, to play gracefully with ideas and believe genuinely that you can find truth in some way. You're already exercising faith in your own faculties, in a number of things. And so you're not going to get to a place where, like this woman said, oh, we believe in the empirical sciences and the data, and I want to, it's like, no, you have faith in the interpretation of that data, because
Right.
the data doesn't say anything. It's just facts. Facts don't do anything. That's why they can't care about your feelings. But you have to have an interpreter of the facts, and you align with one interpreter or another. And so ultimately we're coming back to the same problem. Faith is not at odds with evidence in the slightest. And the fact that people keep repeatedly and especially some of the more famous YouTubers who are atheists will just tout this over and over like it's their favorite parade, that faith is believing in the face of in the face of contrary evidence or without evidence. It just isn't. It isn't that. It hasn't been that. We have to stop playing that game. And the fact that there are people that are growing up in churches who are actually taught sometimes by their congregants or their pastor that you need to have faith, don't ask questions, you should have faith, that person should have a slap on the hand.
That's dangerous.
Shame on you.
Yeah.
One more, guys. I'm just going to get your comments on this. And then we're going to close out this section so I can give you the last video, and then we can maybe wrap it up with a quick discussion on it. But this one.
Pause. I already don't like it because of the. No, hold on. Okay, there we go. The good news is not that someone paid a blood sacrifice to themselves to cleanse you from the wickedness they created you with the capability of having. The good news is that sin, hell, and blood magic is all made up, and there is nothing innately evil about you.
I say again, unless you're morally perfect, then maybe you can identify with this.
Does she say anything? Like, or is this it?
No, this is it, bud. This is it.
I love the music.
It's a little eerie, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
All right, throw it back up. We'll comment on it.
I love how she's like, that in the first place, that God from the wickedness that God created you with. God didn't create us wicked at all. Have you read the Bible?
Yeah.
Like, these are ex-Christians supposedly, right? So
exactly. This is what I don't understand, Dale.
Well, maybe she came out of Calvinism. Maybe she came out of Calvinism, and she thinks that she was designed to be totally depraved.
But even Calvinists say Adam and Eve is the exception, right? They weren't created in wickedness. They had free will unencumbered. At least that's what my pastor said, I guess, right?
No, that's usually like in the London Baptist Confession of Faith, and I think the Westminster Confession, if I'm not mistaken, both will say that Adam and Eve before the fall had the liberty to choose whether or not to sin or not to sin, right? In that. Now I don't know how they get that with determinism, but it is what it is. But no, there's a misunderstanding of Christian anthropology, right? There's a misunderstanding of the Trinity in this concept, right? The good news is that someone paid a blood sacrifice to themselves to cleanse you from the wickedness. No, they didn't pay a blood sacrifice, first of all. And then the misunderstanding of recapitulation. This is goofy. The blood sacrifices have always been a symbol, right? Not the reality is not within the tangible symbol itself, though there is a crossover, right? But the symbol represents the reality of what God is doing in the world, right? This is how we mainly participate in God. And now through grace and all of these other things that comes through the sacraments and whatever else, right? There is that, yes, but it's not magic. It's not blood magic at all. There's nothing within the hemoglobin, right, that really does anything per se. It's how God works in the world that is being misunderstood by this person.
Josh?
Oh man. Okay. Well, Okay, so what it seems like to me is this person is playing the same game with many different toys. And what I mean by that is reductionism can be a poison of its own. If I look at something, anything of great meaning or value to the human experience, I can reduce it to whatever level that makes it absurdity. And I can do this to anything. David, you love stars. You can look out at the stars and see a near infinity staring at you in the face. And for you, the experience is, wow, those are the heavens. They declare the glory of the Lord. I'm so entranced. But I could tell you, those are just, excited molecules and balls of gas that are exhuming heat and light from in inexhaustible distances away. And, the only thing that they can signify is that physics works and you're likely insignificant because of your size. You can play this game with just about anything. And honestly, I think it's cheap and unthinking because you're really not doing anything except reducing the thing down until it's worthy of mockery. And you could do this with anything, right? I can do it as somebody who's a Christian. I can play the same game and say, oh, Adam and Eve in a garden, a walled garden. How convenient. Sucks God couldn't keep the snakes out. Magic snakes and talking snakes and magic apples and so forth. Wow, it's all so silly. Like, honestly,
Yeah.
if I wanted to do that, I could do that also with atheistic ideas, the way that a lot of Christian channels will, and use mockery as a tool, right, to try to point out something. I don't think that it works usually, but you can do that. If I were to say somebody who's an atheist is afraid of the light and doesn't like the burning of the salt of correction in their wounds, and so they run into their dark little corner and live in darkness. It's like, who's that going to convince, really? Honestly, who's that going to convince? I might get a couple of cool high fives from my brothers into the sunset as we go, yeah, we're so right. But
We
really,
got
like,
them,
it's not
right?
going to go anywhere with anybody, And so I
As
just
you can,
that's
John,
yeah, as you see though, Josh, this is the axe to grind. This is where they come to. It's just like it makes me really question what Christianity were you taught,
you guys are
right.
missing the point. She had that awesome music and the little head tilt. That proves she's right. I mean,
Proves it.
I know.
The only thing that it proves is that she's not half bad looking. Like I don't.
Well,
The music was a little.
one thing
That was a weird combo. Yeah.
It was weird.
the one thing I wanted to say is about the blood magic part, right? Because
Yeah.
there's this hidden assumption in here. I don't know if she was smart enough to have this, but in this claim of the blood magic, it's almost implied that, oh, it's just God is bloodthirsty. I've heard atheists and skeptics say he's like a vampire, thirsty for blood, and it's just arbitrary. What does he need blood? What does that have to do with cleansing people from their sins? Well, blood is a necessary aspect. Why? Because our life is in the blood. And what is the penalty or punishment for sin? It is death, spiritual death, this relational separation from God, and physical death, separation of body and soul. So that's why it's necessary. God didn't have an option. It's not like he's like, all right, I can save the world by getting a bunch of oranges, or I can get gallons of Jesus' blood. I'm going to pick the blood. No, this was necessary in order to achieve salvation. The blood, because that is satisfying the penalty for sin, which is death, and that sort of thing, right? So there's one thing I just wanted to say. It's not blood magic. It makes perfect sense. And because Jesus underwent the punishment, he's able to, when he dwells in our hearts with that mystical union, we're able to achieve that beneficial consequence of of him undergoing the punishment, and he applies it in our life through sanctification. So it actually makes perfectly rational, logical sense. This is not just some arbitrary thing of God going, yeah, I want to see blood. I like horror movies, so the blood on the cross there.
The Exorcist was awesome. God gave that a 5-star review.
So at the end of the day, guys, I mean, we see where a lot of this stuff is stemming from. For me, why is it such a big movement now is because I think we're in a culture where, we've had identity politics, we've had the Christian rights kind of take things too far, and I think the churches by and large has failed it in some ways. You know, I do agree with Tyler that we've been doing a better job, but we're minor voices in this thing when we have mega churches that don't want any apologetics in their churches, or local churches shunning hard questions and just saying believe the pastor. I came from one of those churches, you know. So with that said, I do want to play this video, and I want us to maybe just comment or just say it was good and leave this on a positive note, because I think this is a really good video. It kind of moved me. I thought it was a good presentation. So
let's watch this.
A lot of us will ask, if there is a God and God can do anything, then why doesn't he just show himself? Then I would believe. Then everyone would believe. This whole you gotta have faith thing just seems like a lot of games. Well, it's true. God could reveal himself in any way he wants. So the question is, what would be the best way to do it? But before we can answer that, we have to ask, why would God want to reveal himself to us in the first place? And I think the answer is simple. Think about it. Even if you were a God and you created people, why would you want to reveal yourself to them? Would it be just so that they would believe in you, or so they could know you, have a relationship, and open up some sort of connection between you and them? So then the question is, if there is a God, what would be the best way to reveal himself so that you and I could know him? Well, how would you do it? You could just pull back the curtain and reveal yourself as is. I don't think we'd be quite ready for that yet. And I don't
That's
think
accurate.
I could relate to a being that's so far beyond me in every single way. You could cause all kinds of cosmic signs and wonders, like, I don't know, big cosmic signs and wonders. And these would probably work for a little while, but let's be honest, people are fickle. And after the 20th or 30th cosmic wonder, we'd be like, oh good, the sun disappeared again, as I'm driving to work in the dark again. And there's nothing personal about some cold cosmic force. You could come up with a way to reveal yourself to every single person who ever walked the face of the earth individually. But doesn't this seem a little door-to-door salesman? Hey, how's it going? And when would you do it? At what age? For how long? Would you just show up in someone's life physically, spiritually, a voice in the head? And just for clarity and continuity, if you're going to reveal yourself, doesn't it make more sense just to do it once and for everybody, rather than billions and billions and billions of times? I'm sure you could very easily just make everyone know you by infusing yourself into their brains, which means no freedom for us. But you can't force a relationship. Who does that? I mean, would you rather your spouse choose you out of their own, I don't know, free choice, or because you somehow altered their mind and will? Or you could just become one of them. Cross over to their time and space, their history, and take on all those little things that make us human. Which one of these do you think would be the best way to reveal yourself? And if you do become one of them, you could go as anyone you want. A king, a political ruler, a powerful CEO, a superhuman, someone born in that thing you feed your animals out of. I don't know about you, but I know which one I'm following. But is that enough? I mean, you can't just show up in history and start telling everyone you're God. Hey, I'm God. People would either think you're out of your mind crazy or just 100%. You'd need something else. What if you pre-announced that you were coming? You could inspire a bunch of different writers from different times and different places, all to write about you long before your foot ever hit the ground. In fact, you'd be the only human being in the history of the world ever to be pre-announced. But is that enough? I mean, obviously everything you said and did would be absolute, but we don't always get it. We like signs and wonders to confirm things. So maybe you could do some kind of great signs and wonders to confirm things. Why doesn't God just show himself? Now, I know some of you are thinking, yeah, but that was 2,000 years ago. I wasn't there. Do you think God is bound by space and time? Do you think your mind and your soul is bound by space and time? And I know some of you may not believe in any of this, and that's your choice. But what if there's a chance that God walked on the face of this earth as a human being?
Yeah, that's good. So, and that touches me in a really good spot, and I'm glad we're ending the show here because that's exactly what happened, right?
Yep.
And yet, so everything in that video, I agree with wholeheartedly. And yet, when God did reveal himself to people, there were still those people that said no, right? And so what makes us, I mean, this, so I'm gonna get into my heart a little bit and get my feels. I have prayed. Josh has experienced God on a level that I never have, right? I might not ever, right? And at one point in time, I was so jealous because I was every night praying that God would reveal himself to me in the same way that he revealed himself to Josh, right? And yet he hasn't. And yet my faith in God is just as strong, if not stronger, than Josh's. No offense, bro. Like, not trying to
I'm taking.
not trying to start a competition. But the point is that even in the midst of God revealing himself, and it, like the video said, if he did it to everybody, people would just find ways, because this is how we are. This is how they treated Jesus whenever he walked on the face of the earth, right? They would find ways to discredit. And maybe not even in reality, right? Maybe they're not really even discrediting him, but in their mind, it's enough. He does miracles, well, we're just going to appropriate that to Satan. Oh, he rose from the dead, we're just going to say the disciples stole the body. He did all these things. They're going to find ways not to believe in him. They're going to find ways to discredit him, right? Why would we think we're any different? There's some that will believe, there's some that won't, right? And for us to have the freedom to choose to have that relationship, I think, is the greatest gift that God could have ever given us.
Right.
And
Josh?
to be fair, I understand why somebody would want to strive after having a deep spiritual experience of the kind that Tyler's talking about. I've had some really unique experiences, let's say. None of them I asked for. And so I think a lot of that comes into play because God doesn't want us. I'll say it this way. Spiritual disappointment is necessary so that you don't get comfortable in the wrong home.
It's good.
Dale?
Yeah, I mean, I liked that video. I mean, I think it speaks to that hiddenness of God, and specifically the Christian God in particular. And yeah, I mean, it did a great job of answering. I was thinking of, like, Tyler Vela, for example, during that thing. Like, there's your answer. Like, if you think about the alternatives, if you sit down and think of God, okay, what do you expect? You want God to write his name in the moon? Well, that's not going to achieve his end, and stuff like that. And it's important to note, as we've constantly said, God's goal is not just to give everyone belief that God exists or that Jesus is God and died for your sins. The demons believe those propositions, and they're damned to hell anyways, right? It's God's goal is a end goal of salvation. It is redeeming us from our sins, and that, yes, propositional belief, that is necessary and essential part of that. So I don't want to downplay that. Sometimes it sounds like we are downplaying that when what we're saying, no, that's necessary too. You can't believe in something that you don't believe that exists. I don't know if that made sense, but you have to believe propositions before you can trust and believe in a person and stuff like that, right? It's on the basis of what Jesus did for us, who he is, his character, God's morally perfect, never changing character, the fact that he will always fulfill his promises and do what he says he's going to do. You guys are laughing at something, but yeah. So look, when we ask about the hiddenness of God and the evidence that God gives and how he's chosen to engage with us in salvation history, there's a lot more than just providing you with a belief that God exists or Christianity is true. He's trying to accomplish a much loftier goal. And when you're dealing with free will human beings, it's not as straightforward as some of us might think, because we don't always react the way we're supposed to, or the I've looked at myself and I'm like, well, how that is just totally illogical, irrational, stupid. Why would I choose to do that? Like, it made no sense, right? So we all do that at times. So God's having to work with us for who we are, and He knows in His omniscience the best way to save as many souls as possible.
Right. And I think that, as we conduct ourselves with those that have deconstructed, I've been on the online all week debating these guys this week. Hundreds of comments. And it's for the people that don't have the answers that I strive to give those answers to. I keep this video in mind because I think it's profound. I think that it is the best way to reach people, was becoming a person and to getting to know us and taking on all our fears, our pains, and so forth. And I think that's what Jesus did. And I think I've got a good reason to believe it. And I think I got good reason to trust it. So with that said, guys, thanks for coming on tonight. Thanks for being with me tonight and going over some of the stuff. This, deconstruction weighs heavily on my heart because I love God so much. I don't see how people could, once they claim to devote their lives to something, could just easily toss it aside. For me, when I had my period of deconstruction, so to speak, I was really questioning everything. And I decided, if I'm going to give my life to this, I need to know about it. And I didn't stop at just some of these silly arguments. I wanted answers to those specific questions. And I got the answers to them. I was satisfied with those answers because it made more sense than the alternative.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be honest with the evidence. And I had to unlearn a lot of things I learned. I had to unlearn them. Some of the things I believed were false. Were because a pastor said. When I realized that's nonsense. That's not what Christ was about. That's not what the apostles taught. So I want to keep that in mind. Guys, we have a lot more content coming your way. I'm in talks with a couple of high-end scholars on the problem of evil, and we're going to be talking about animal suffering and a theology of ecology. So I'm in talks with Trent Doherty and Greg Evans. So I'm really looking forward to getting that. Craig Evans has one of the best books on the problem of evil, if you ask me. Talks about a lot of stuff that we haven't talked about in theology and when it comes to theodicy. I think his book is one of a kind, and Trent Doherty is really good when it comes to the animal suffering and stuff like that. He gave a theodicy on animal suffering. Expensive book, but I would encourage anybody to get those books when you have questions on the problem of evil and stuff like that. So both those books are really, really good. So anything you got going on, Tyler? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, Dell and I. So first of all, thank you for GU for the $3 super chat. Here's $3 for the 3 Baptist-ish bros becoming Orthodox. Right on. Thank you for that, GU. And by the way, so Jack White, hey, FU crew, laugh out not the best acronym. We're reclaiming that, bro. So recapitulation theory is in motion with Faith Unaltered. We're taking back the FU and making it a godly thing. And so there's that. Dave Gyrer coming in with the $7.99 super chat. Thank you, brother. We appreciate it so much. So y'all are awesome.
Glad you guys like the show.
Yeah, definitely glad you guys like the show. Dell and I have on the 13th, so next Saturday, we have got Barbara, the psychic, that came on with us to discuss, some of her beliefs and things like that. So she's coming back to grill Dell and I. So Dell and I will be in the hot seat. David, I don't know if you're going to join us for that one. That'd be cool if you are. Okay, no, fair enough.
One thing about that, so I just noticed, maybe I've screwed up, but for some reason in StreamYard, I've got it down for the 16th. So I don't know if I at 10
You probably created it on a 16th or something.
No, it's the scheduled date is April 16th. So I'm wondering, because I've got it for the 13th and 16th. So I've got to go back to my emails and figure that out. Are you, whatever day that is then, Tyler?
Yeah, let me know. I would see the 16th is on a Tuesday, and in our conversation, well, we can talk about this later. But yeah, I'm fine.
On there, yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
Got a psychic coming on.
Yeah, right. We got a psychic coming on sometime. We'll keep you up to date. Then on the 23rd, we have, so for 3 Crowns, we've got CJ Cox coming on to discuss simple foreknowledge with us. And then on the 27th, so that Saturday, we've got Christian Halls coming on to discuss simple foreknowledge with us. So CJ is going to discuss it with Dane on 3 Crowns, and then we're going to follow up with Christian Halls on that and on Faith Unaltered. So that will be Saturday, the 27th at 7 p.m. And then on the 10th of May, I'm really excited about this one. We've got Dr. David Bradshaw coming back on to discuss time and knowledge, God's knowledge in relationship to time and creation from an Orthodox perspective. So that's going to be fun. And then on the 13th, my brother and my godfather, Dr. Bo Branson, is coming back on. So this is Monday the 13th at 8 p.m. Central, is coming on with Father John Whiteford and the guys from Method Ministries. We are going to have a discussion with those guys. We've been doing a couple Orthodox Protestant back and forths. They released a video. Josh Sherman and I released a video. They released a response video. So I was like, guys, instead of doing, endless response videos, I said, let's just get together and talk about justification. They agreed. We found out a time that works, and that's going to be Monday the 13th. So again, Dr. Bo Branson, Father John Whiteford, and the guys from Method Ministries will be joining me that day to talk about justification from an Orthodox and Protestant viewpoint. Other than that, that's all I've got, y'all. Thank you for joining us. Make sure to deconstruct or demolish that like button. That's the only deconstruction and demolishing that we approve here on Faith Unaltered. So make sure you do that to the like button. Take it out for coffee and then leave it just leave it, like stand up the like button for us. And yeah, we'll see you next time. So Dale, Josh, anything you guys got going on?
Yes. So I also like demolishing the arguments of the atheists and skeptics, but yeah. So on mine, I did.
Fair enough.
I did confirm, Tyler. So it is. She made a change, so it will be the last we've got. It is April 16th at 10 a.m. is when the psychic's going to come on, and I provided a link in the live chat to her supposed interview with Jesus of Nazareth. So you can read that and get a sense of how wrong her theology is on that front. But
so Tuesday, April 16th.
Yeah, at 10 a.m.
Okay.
Eastern.
All right. I got it.
She had to change that. Yeah. So my next show on Real Seekers for you guys is going to be Monday, April 8th at 1 p.m. And I'm bringing on a non-religious agnostic who is he's an ex-Catholic named Kevin Cath. And he's a great guy. I find him one of my closest friends. So I can't believe we've never been on each other's podcasts until now. But I was on his show talking about the Shroud last week. He's coming on my show to talk about the doctrine of apostolic succession, as well as something I haven't really covered before, the Eucharistic miracles, because he's done an evaluation of all the Roman Catholic miracle claims, healings, as well as Eucharistic miracles, and he finds the evidence not persuasive. So we're going to be discussing that. And I know he just did a show with Caleb Jackson, who's a friend of this show, on his book on miracles as well. So yeah, that's my next show, April 8th at 1 p.m.
So you said a Roman Catholic coming on to discuss apostolic succession. Did I hear that right?
He's an ex-Catholic, so he's
not ex-Catholic
now, but yeah, he's like a most of his videos are against the Traddy Caths, which is a movement of traditional, them.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, Tyler, take us out, man.
Thank you all again for joining us. Again, please deconstruct and demolish the like button. If you'd like to donate to Faith Unaltered and keep us on the air, you can do that one of 3 ways. You can do that with Cash App, you can do that with Venmo, and you can do that with PayPal. All of our links are in the description below. Also, leave us a comment. let us know what you thought of this episode, and we will see you next time. And until then, good night, God bless, and stay like Christ.